In Hebraic thought, the knowledge of good and evil is not merely intellectual awareness or information. It is a Hebraic idiom that refers to moral autonomy. Moral autonomy is the authority to judge and determine what is right and wrong for oneself. This authority belongs to Yahuwah alone. Only He knows what is right and wrong for us. For this reason, humanity was commanded not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the garden. The prohibition was not on knowledge itself, but about autonomy. Only a God can rule over the self without answering to a higher power. And this is why Satan told Adam and Eve, "You will become like gods if you eat of it." Humanity was created to live in dependence upon Yahuwah, receiving instruction, righteousness, and life from Him. Right and wrong were to be defined by His word and His presence. Had humanity continued to trust Yahuwah to define good and evil for them, they would have remained connected to the tree of life, sustained by His authority and provision. When they ate from the tree of knowledge, they seized the authority to judge for themselves, becoming like gods in the sense that they assumed the role of moral ruler over their own lives. In doing so, humanity placed itself under the rule of the flesh, having to be born of flesh, governed by perception, desire, and self-determination. This act did not bring life, but separation and death. Therefore, the call to life is the call to relinquish moral autonomy. To overcome the flesh is to disconnect from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, to reject self-rule and self-defined righteousness, and to be reattached to Yahuwah's tree of life, the tree of the placenta, a sign in the flesh of the tree of nourishment. Only when the soul surrenders the authority to define right and wrong and gives Yahweh control, the silver cord will be reattached and the living word be received, true life flowing once again. In Ecclesiastes 12:6, Solomon writes, "Before the silver cord is severed and the golden bowl is broken, before the pitcher is shattered at the spring and the wheel broken at the well." These images speak not only of physical death, but of spiritual life, its source, and the consequences of separation from Yahweh. The golden bowl may be understood as corresponding to the golden bowl of manna preserved before Yahuwah, the manna of heaven, in Exodus 16:33. This manna represents unleavened bread, the bread of righteousness that sustains our souls whilst on earth. Spiritually, this manna is received when one hears and receives the living word, which cleanses and sustains life. That living word is Yahusha, the true bread from heaven. When Ecclesiastes speaks of the golden bowl being broken, it signifies a state in which a person can no longer receive the living word that gives life and cleansing. Without that heavenly provision, spiritual life fades. The silver cord represents the life connection of the soul, but not just the attachment to the physical body. The silver cord signifies the link which a soul is kept alive. The soul must be tethered to a source in order to live. In the natural state, the soul is bound to the flesh and governed by it. Yet eternal life requires that this attachment be overcome. Only then can we be attached to the tree of life instead. We must die to flesh, severing the soul's dependence on it. Only then can the silver cord be reattached to Yahuwah Himself. In this sense, the silver cord is a spiritual umbilical, reconnecting the soul to its true source of life. The silver cord cannot be attached to two sources. Yahuwah's tree of life is a spiritual placenta, attaching us to the source of life. Souls are like fruit in the garden that has fallen from that tree. If the soul remains attached to the flesh for its source of life, when the flesh expires, the soul will expire too. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil represents moral autonomy, determining right and wrong apart from Yahuwah's authority. This autonomy leads to expiration of the soul. For our soul to live, we must be connected to a source of life. The flesh is not a reliable source, as it is only temporary. For eternal life, we must be attached to Yahuwah via the tree of life, from whom true life continually flows even after physical life ends. Being born again represents the severing of attachment to flesh and being reattached to a different source of life, which is His tree. The pitcher at the spring represents the human body as a vessel, designed to receive and hold life. The spring signifies the source of living water, righteousness that comes from Yahuwah alone. The body is not the source of life, but a container meant to be filled. The wheel at the well represents the means by which that life-giving water is drawn continually. When the wheel is intact, water can be drawn again and again. When it is broken, the vessel remains empty. Spiritually, this points to the loss of access to righteousness and sustaining life when connection to Yahuwah is severed. Together, these images form a unified message. that life is sustained only through continued attachment to Yahuwah. When the soul is cut off from him, when the manna of heaven is no longer received, and when access to living water ends, we pass away. Detach the cord from flesh and attach it to the true vine. While the cord can still be reattached, the bowl still holds manna, and the wheel still draws water from the well of life. The baby is born into the world like the apple falls from the tree. Disconnected from its host, without an eternal source of life, both expire. That is why we must detach the silver cord from flesh and return to Yahuwah's tree. The only way to do that is to refuse the tree of knowledge, which is moral autonomy, and submit to Yahuwah fully.